Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, and happy Halloween! Gaze upon my slapdash costume, and hear my comic book witticisms, and know dread. Today, I'm taking issue with JLA 7 Caskets, a 48-page one-shot adventure written and illustrated by Dan Brereton. It sees the Justice League of America facing ancient supernatural forces, which certainly seems holiday appropriate. So let's crack this sucker open and see if the comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. But scary! Our story begins in Alaska, as we see a man ice fishing at night and his encounter with strange phantasms, which, according to narration, sent him to a local bar more than an hour later, drunk and detailing his experience to others. It was funny to the other patrons at first, before it got uncomfortable and creepy. Someone broke the tension by telling Spooky George to have a drink, at which point everyone laughed and tried to forget what they'd heard from a guy in his 50s that had never touched a drink in his life. A horrible experience driving a normally sober man to drink. I can relate. Further narration details times at which other ghostly occurrences happen across the United States, which is kind of weird since the events are told chronologically, but I guess we have to guess it's local time for each location. San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Manhattan, and Gotham all have supernatural reports resulting in deaths and comas. The narration is now in quotation marks, meaning a character's explaining how NASA's clueless, there's no alien or supervillain influences, and their best guess is an energy field beneath the Earth's crust. It's a meeting of the JLA, and yeah, the dialogue progression is weird here. It starts in the center with Superman's bubble, goes right from there, then you have to jump back to the left for Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern's dialogue, then jump to the right to Aquaman. Or maybe Aquaman's is after Martian Manhunters and before Diana's? Fear the awkward placement of dialogue bubbles. Woo! GL, Kyle Rayner here, suggests the subterranean cause is somehow alive. However, he arrived at that conclusion. They could use some magical experts, but they're all unavailable for various reasons. Bats is surprised at how tense this is making everyone when a pair of ghost heads pop out of the table with serpents in tow. And look how comically confused the King of Atlantis is. I can't tell if he's dumbfounded by modern-day reality shows or his brain has somehow reverted to a Cro-Magnon state. Why Aquaman forehead hurt? It's the two ghosts that spooked the fishermen in the beginning, claiming to be as plagued by visitations as the Earth. Speaking in tandem, they say the heroes of law will have to leave their watchtower to discover old truths that Aquaman understands thanks to his old blood. The last hint they give before vanishing is that of a city below. Hey, did they call my blood old? I'll have you know it often gets mistaken for teenaged blood. It still gets carded when it buys beer. A couple hours later, they're 1,500 feet beneath an ice cap and headed for an underwater city Arthur wished had stayed lost and forgotten, like whatever name it may have had. And check Rayner using an energy whale for transport. Insert Pinocchio-related jokes here, folks. Communicating telepathically, courtesy of the resident Martian, GL and Flash make it known how much they don't like the situation as the team knocks through a barricade set up by the Atlanteans long ago. They come upon a map of the world, but with almost alien-looking continents, probably from being about 20 million years old or so by Batman's estimates. There are markings for cities, but according to Arthur, 7 of them are birthplaces/seats of power to old warrior kings, said to have been buried beneath their cities and waiting to return. Each king represented a pre-human race, and were united under a single terrible ruler. One location, marked with a squid-like skull emblem, is where still sleeps a powerful creature they once worshipped as a god. Superman says that their team is about truth, among other things, and the world deserves to know about stuff like this. But Aquaman claims these ugly truths are from a period best forgotten and has nothing to do with humans. Yeah, 'cause in a world where ninjas beat up muggers and demigods duke it out in major cities every other day, the idea that there used to be non-human inhabitants on Earth that have long since been turned to dust
would just be bonkers.
Soups doesn't like the idea of keeping facts in the dark, probably the reporter in him talking, and feels they can benefit from the knowledge of investigating if the entity really exists. Aquaman says they should focus on the 7 points of the dead rulers. He has a point. 7 dead kings, 7 leaguers. It's conveniently symmetrical. Flash doesn't seem to understand why they're arguing, and one woman thinks poking the potential threat with a stick isn't a good idea. After Manhunter reasons that the larger threat to the Earth may be the spectral events related to the kings, Superman options to investigate the sleeping god himself, while the others investigate the other points. Before long, they're back above water, headed to their respective locations, as we see the Ghost Twins in the background, perhaps watching them while remaining unseen. Rayner notes that the pair could have done a better job of informing them of their task, but Wendy says that's typical of such specters. Anyway, Soup starts drilling into the Earth, and 2,000 miles later, hears voices as he arrives upon a cavern with a Lovecraftian tendril monster. It begins to overtake the Man of Steel's mind, drawing him closer to one eye among many. Eyes! Portals! How can I? I can't go in there!
The giant contact lens is in the way!
Clark enters a vision which tells of a queen who ruled a young world with 7 royal retainers that were champions of their respective races. This seems to be explained not only by Big Blue's dialogue, but a disembodied voice as well. All were watched by a dark and unseen force, with which the queen had a set of twins.
You see, kids, when a prehistoric matriarch and an unspeakable demonic horror from another dimension love each other very much,
the queen orders her vassals out, calling them craven wretches for some reason, telling them to spread the word that their Dark Lord's family has expanded. For some other reason, this was betraying her loyal servants, and as tendrils begin constricting around Superman, the vision continues that turmoil led to infighting that destroyed the entire empire. Soups fights against the entity draining his life force, while feeling it feed on the entire planet's suffering and misrule.
Suffering and misrule, huh? I would think DC would have had it stuffed by now. No, this time I mean the other DC. Come to think of it, either one is acceptable.
It's 12 hours later, and the League encounter the returned kings. Batman finds a butterfly moth leaf creature. Aquaman takes on a squid-faced foe, while Diana hunts a man-sized bat with a scythe, leading me to wonder if switching with Bruce would be more appropriate or too on the nose. Flash is the lucky devil facing both a serpent king and a queen spider. Green Lantern fights a giant frog, and the Martian faces the Moon King. Because why not? They're each beaten and left unconscious, later reconnoitering at Lantern's location at Cape Canaveral 10 hours later. Kyle's just now regaining consciousness, which kind of makes you wonder how long it took the team to get there after they woke up, and if they had all considered taking him to the medical facilities on the Watchtower. Maybe a beating from an ancient warrior is something better left slept off. The sky is so caked in ghosts the sun has been blocked out, and the League is despondent at how they were dropped like a bag of malty potatoes. They're also feeling differently, sluggish and disconnected, until they realize they've been influenced by chaos energy. Gee, thanks. Knowing that makes me feel oodles better. That's when the spooky twins return, saying they knew the heroes would fail, and Batman wants them to cut the cryptic talk and get to the point. The Queen, Jadith, and her 7 vassals managed to communicate to the nameless god within the earth, and it granted her immense power, which she promised to share with her chosen warriors, but never did. She made sure they wouldn't ever share or take her power by siring 2 children for the entity. The 7 spent years plotting revenge, but were apparently really lazy and never acting it out, as Jadith eventually discovered their treachery and exiled them. The twins continue that the warrior rulers slew the queen, but that panel sure does make it look like the kids are the ones doing it. The 7 cursed the offspring and would have killed them and each other, but the empire was destroyed, the dark god's power lost as it entered a long slumber. Its dreams have let loose the endless phantoms, and when it finally awakens, it'll destroy all humankind. Since the League is currently too weak to stop them, the spectral duo summon an orb which will imbue them with chaos magic to give them the strength necessary to fight back. Jean Jones doesn't trust them or their plan, then loses it after Flash calls him afraid, straight up grabbing the speedster's throat, threatening that being merged with chaos magic will have the team attacking each other, and Wally responds by threatening to kill his teammate.
So, the New 52 was basically a universe horribly mutated by chaos energy. Makes sense when you think about it.
Is someone playing John Williams? Because Superman arrives to break up the scuffle, saying they're going ahead with the twins' plan. Manhunter seems dazed in disbelief of what he just did, contrasted against Wally's continued standoffish demeanor. And here I thought he was just waving his hands in the air like he just don't care. Soups explains he was almost devoured by the creature, and remember, by the narration's chronology, he'd been fighting that thing for a good 22 hours or so. He says that while they do have to meet their foe on its own terms, this choice doesn't mean they stop being heroes. It's a risk he's willing to take for the sake of the planet, and the rest of the League gradually and perhaps a little begrudgingly agree. The veil of disorder takes them, and the Justice League of America is mutated into demonic mirrors of their former selves. Superman's crest is a snake, Wonder Woman has moons on her costume, and maybe more Lucky Charms shapes on her back, and some of them look like they have no noses.
Beware! The inevitable and ceaseless jokes about how they smell. Woo!
The Moon King arrives in 7 Caskets Island, Canada, near the magnetic North Pole, explaining the title, sort of, to meet up with his fellow warriors. Now they're ready to cultivate the entity's power and avenge their kingdoms and beloved queen. Further evidence the Ghost Kids weren't all on the up and up. Strangely enough, Moony McMoonface asks about the forces being rallied against them, which the others say they've met and were found weak. I say strange because Moon freaking fought Manhunter. Is he just confirming with the others that their opponents were nothing special? Well, speaking of the Chaos-enhanced JLA, who are so eager to get their battle underway, they start bickering how any one of them can handle the task alone. They're told to head to the Gathering of Caskets, where the 7 are at the nexus of power, and able to fully awaken the Dark God. However, it will only give its power to one warrior, as per the curse, so only a single will dooms the world. The League leave, with the brother and sister exchanging soons. Demon Soups deduces where to find the 7, who are also falling susceptible to infighting, and the groups finally meet as 2 sort of teams. Even altered as he is, Superman still gives them the option of surrender. I mean, they don't listen, but hey, that's something. The Rumble gets a few panels in, seems the lasso of truth is now a whip of whipping, and lightning strikes around them as the League senses something near.
Yes, the air is electric. I feel a quickening.
Quickening? Should we be expecting some decapitations?
Lightning strikes several times, each with a doom, and both sides of the fight are down, apparently just as the Ghost Twins had planned, so no one would witness as they called the Dark God, their father, so that they may take his power. Because I guess it was important that no one see them do it?
Yeah, so the Ghost Kids were the Queen's children the whole time. Don't know if that was supposed to be a big surprise up to this point, but yeah, not really.
Superman is the first to get to his feet as the entity declares only one shall be granted its power to rule. So the twins reveal their true aspect. The curse placed upon them by the 7 warriors fused their bodies, which couldn't survive in such a state, and thus it merged their spirits. Since they're technically one now, they figure this is enough of a loophole. However, when Superman realizes the League and the Warrior Kings, and Queen, fell because they acted without leadership, he interrupts the fused specters. As the last standing in battle, he demands his prize, and the terms of the curse mean he should claim the power. It works as the rest of the League get up, realizing they've been tricked. Though upset at first, the twins try coaxing Superman to kill his former friends. However, Clark isn't keen on history repeating itself, so he suggests they share the power. Supes will be the conduit, but the League will use it together, a sort of rule by committee. The entity really doesn't like that idea, and likes it even less when Superman suggests he's powerless by the rules of the curse. The nameless creature seems to blame its own children, their betrayal coming full circle, and the giant form of Jadeth is shown, beckoning her children to their fused parents.
How long are you grounded for after impeding genocide and global domination?
The League basically tell them to get lost since their time has passed, and they seem fairly okay with it, all things considered. Turns out the curse bound Jadeth to her dark benefactor, which eventually merged them together, and she waited for a time to re-rule the Earth. Since that's not happening, they take their kids, warriors, world-plaguing ghosts, and chaos energy with them, returning our heroes to normal. A day and a half has gone by, and with some repairs, it's like nothing ever happened. Except for those people earlier in the book that apparently died from being haunted so much. The story ends with the acknowledgement that the entity is still beneath the Earth, and if they can let it sleep for another 14 million years, Aquaman asks if they should. Superman responds, apparently like a wise Atlantean, that it's better to let sleeping gods lie. Cue freeze frame laugh, audience applause, and a "the end" with a question mark.
And that is JLA 7 Caskets. Time was, these kind of extra long standalone one-shots were fairly common, but rarely, if ever, impacted the monthly canon. This entry was fairly lukewarm, with a decent enough premise and a serviceable execution.
It's weird how the story decides to note the passing of time, like the Leaguers taking 10-hour naps, or at least Green Lantern, or Superman spending the better part of a day fighting a Cthulhu knockoff. Then when they face the 7 warriors, the battle's over in like 10 minutes, maybe less. The Leaguers are mostly in character, with the exception of Flash and Green Lantern being a bit more skittish than I remember them being at the time. Later, out-of-character moments, like Jean and Wally attacking each other, can be explained as an effect of the ambient chaos energy, but since these people are mostly friends, you'd think we'd get some dialogue later on after everything's resolved of the two apologizing to each other. The argument about what humanity is or isn't ready for is little more than a catalyst for Superman to investigate the entity, and is only mentioned again via a joke at the story's conclusion. As for the title, the Caskets at first seem to relate to the 7 kings and their resting places. Then you have the big fight we hardly see on an island called 7 Caskets, which I thought was a real place, but all my searches for it largely came up with references to this comic.
The 7 warriors are fine enough enemies for the League, but their story, like their curse, doesn't get much clarification. The Ghost Twins were lying to a degree, and when the vassals regrouped after beating Wonder Woman and the others, the kings and queens seemed to retain some level of loyalty for Jadeth, at least to consider her beloved. Yet somehow they could place a curse that does a bunch of different stuff at once, and is powerful enough to restrain what they considered a god. That's some one more day level magic ambiguity. Now that's scary.
I didn't care that much for the art, but I wouldn't call it bad per se. That said, there are times when the characters look downright goofy or blended into the environment around them. That didn't exactly help the big fight scene between 2 sets of 7, which itself didn't feel like it lived up to the power levels they had previously emphasized. It was very short and fairly lackluster.
It's not a long read, it's nothing too epic, but I've certainly read worse, and maybe the art is up your alley. Tune in next week, where the last few episodes of the season will see reviews of some Marvel material for a change.
If I'm being completely honest, when I wrote that joke about the end question mark, I completely forgot there actually was a caption exactly like that on the last page. Hand to God.